you probably thought what you thought at that point, where you're saying, I need to make a change now because I'm accepting responsibility and accountability of my actions. Looking back, do you still view that day the same, or do you have a more evolved and maybe more seasoned view of it?
Yeah, good question. It's a more evolved, certainly. It took me, I like to say that at the same time, almost at the same time, I was introduced to a youth pastor in my seventh grade year. So right at about the same time, seventh and eighth grade, who uh, my sister died and all of my parents picked up and moved to another state, and I wasn't going to go anywhere. So I stayed and they took me in. And so I got to see, they had two daughters that were 5 or 6 years younger than me. So I got to see kind of how a real family worked. You know, he played catch with me. He took me to softball games. He loved the Dodgers. I love the Dodgers. Uh, and so there was this, he was as much like me as I was like me. And I'd never met somebody like this before. And they actually loaded a lunchbox and gave it to me on the first day. I thought I had to share it with everybody. I asked them when I opened the lunchbox going to school that first day, I was like, so I have everybody's stuff here. And they're like, no, man, that's yours. It's more food than I'd ever gotten in my whole life at one time, other than what I bought for myself after working. And so I had that influence come into my life, and that combined with that epiphany that I had at 14, I'd like to say that I skipped off of the pond. Instead of going straight and eventually going under, I skipped. I didn't hockey stick, right? It wasn't instantaneous and I'm taking responsibility. I don't want to make it sound like that, because that wasn't it at all. I had a tough 10 years in front of me starting at 14 years old. Again, a lot of murder, a lot of suicide. I was stabbed. I was beaten. I mean, I went through it to get where I am, but I kind of had that basis built under me at that point. I had put a foundation in there between those two different circumstances, and I knew how to work on top of it based on, the life I had led up to that point. All of that kind of coalesced together to kind of give me that foundation. And then from that foundation, I was able to build on it. But you're talking about, 20 years, 15 years, before you really start to go, oh, that paid some benefits. And probably not even till my 30s that I really realized the impact that that moment had on me.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's when I learned the most about myself, is in my 30s. And I make this joke to a few people that know me, that if you can survive your late teens and all of your 20s, you will become a good man. And by that, I mean, because I learned what family was from other people. Similar to you, how they took you in and they did the lunchbox, they played catch and things like that. I found people outside of my blood family that I felt were more like me, and I felt like I was more like them, and they taught me family. And these are people that necessarily didn't look like me. They didn't speak the language that I spoke in home, but they knew English as well. And I point this out because it seems like there's a similar childhood story between you and I, and maybe for many of those who are listening, because so many children have some form of trauma that a lot of them can't overcome in their adult life. And for you to point out that you made a decision at 14, 14 is so young to do that. And then to become the man you are now, learning more. You'll learn in your 30s, in your 40s, and now you're doing all of these beautiful things and you're helping other people. If you can look towards the next generation coming up, Jerry, what would you want to tell them in regards to what you've learned and maybe what can help them?
So I got some great advice one time. I started my first business at 28. I was a millionaire at 33. My first business, the first year, did $4 million in revenue. By the fourth year, we were doing $14 million in revenue. So I dove in and was way over my head really, really quick, because I knew how to sell. I was energetic. I had contacts. I put myself out there. I wasn't afraid for people to tell me no. I didn't care what you thought about me. I mean, I had all of the attributes that really lent itself towards a possibility of being successful from an entrepreneurial perspective. The thing that I had to learn as I got closer to my 30s, and your timing is 100% correct. That was when I had my second epiphany that had a huge impact on my life. I was 28 years old, and I had kind of grown a reputation in the transportation business as somebody who knew what they were doing. And competitively wise, I had helped this company grow very quickly. And so people started to notice up in the Northwest. And I got an envelope one day sent to my desk, and in it was a pro forma and a forward-looking, a P&L, if you will, and a balance sheet explaining what this business would look like. And they wanted me to come head up this new transportation business. They would finance it. I would be the CEO, the person in charge. At that point, I'm just an operations manager at a company doing $5 million a year with 100 employees. And I was untouchable, and I was incorrigible. I was terrible. I don't know how anybody put up with me, right? Because again, look at my background, and to your point, I'm not mature enough to know what I don't know, and I was just king of the world. So I was incorrigible. But I opened that, and again, this was another moment. I won't say it was the voice the same way that the 14-year-old moment was, but it was pretty significant sitting in that desk in Northwest Portland. I could walk you to it right now because I remember it that well. And as I looked at that pro forma, I realized I had no idea what I was looking at. I didn't know what it was. It didn't make any sense to me because I hadn't dealt with financials before. And staring at that, rather than setting it aside and go, which is what so many people do, particularly young people, I'm going to go do what I'm comfortable with. I'm going to go hang with those boys in the bar and talk sports because that's what I'm comfortable with. I can argue with anybody who the best baseball player of all time is because that's what I'm comfortable with. What makes me uncomfortable is all this stuff over here that I don't know. So for me, at 28 years old, my second serious epiphany in life, and this one told me to shut up and listen. Simple, nothing to it more than that. Shut up and listen, or you're going to be doing the same thing that you're doing now when you're 50 years old. And I picked my head up, and here are all these people who are 50 years old working for me, who had been on this job for 20, 25 years. Nothing matter with earning a living and working hard. I'm not denigrating that, obviously, at all. But if I wanted to do that for the next 30 years, I saw it right there at 20 years old in front of me, 28 years old in front of me. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. I want more. And so shutting up and listen means I got rid of all of my friends. I quit going to the bar. I quit hanging out with people who were not as smart as I was. I found people that were smarter, people who knew things that I didn't know. I didn't realize it was okay to be wrong. I didn't realize it was okay not to talk.